A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the celebration of the release of Chicago Medical School's 9th volume of Synapses. This annual event celebrates creativity in all its vibrant forms, from the visual arts to works of poetry and prose, including the beautiful music we just heard performed by Dr. Hector Rasgado-Flores. So a round of applause for Dr. Flores. I'm happy to be here with you all today as we take this opportunity to pause from our busy lives and appreciate the immense talent of our CMS community as showcased by this creative journal and by our scheduled speakers today. This 2025 publication is filled with beautiful artwork and photographs, thought-provoking fiction and non-fiction pieces, and poetry that reflects on many facets of the human experience. Our medical school places great value on the integration of humanities in medical education, and it is clear that many of our students also value the role of the arts in their lives as medical students. In the last few years, our students have taken the initiative to form photography and theater clubs, and I'm glad to see that so many of them have also found an outlet for their creativity and expression within the pages of this journal. With the annual publication of Synapses and this accompanying event, we thus reaffirm our commitment to fostering an environment where innovation thrives and creativity flourishes. Since the journal's conception in 2017, Synapses has served as a celebration of connections. Named for the junctions between neurons that facilitate the passage of information from one nerve cell to another, the journal examines and celebrates the connection between people and the connections between medicine and art. This afternoon, we'll hear from several speakers who will share their art and writing with us. One of our first-year medical students will discuss her art submission that appears on our cover this year, and we'll hear a poem read by another first-year student. A second-year student will talk about her fiction submission, and if we are lucky, a third-year student who is on a clinical rotation will come in and discuss her nonfiction essay. She's busy in the clinical side, and that's down in the city. Sometimes it's hard for them to get up here. We also have a faculty member here who will tell us about her unique art submission, the first instance Synapses has received of a handmade piece of jewelry. And if you haven't had a chance to already, I encourage you to spend some time after the program looking at the exhibit that we have on display here in this room, featuring 24 works of art, photography, and poetry created by CMS students, faculty, and alumni. I'd like to close by thanking everyone who shared their art and talents with us by contributing to the journal, and also everyone who worked with passion, diligence, and a commitment to excellence to publish this journal. It's a large team that includes our students, alumni, staff, faculty, and some of our university partners. I would be remiss if I did not specifically call out Ms. Candice Kosa, who serves as the managing editor for the journal, with my heartfelt thanks for her dedication to this effort. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Candice to introduce our first speaker. Come on up, Candice.
So every year when we open the call for submissions to the journal, we invite our artists and photographers to indicate that they want their submission to be considered for the cover. And then our editorial board selects one piece of art or photography to be featured on the cover. What the board looks for is something that represents, well, we ask people to submit an artistic rendition of their idea of a synapse. And then we look for something that both is artistically moving and also represents the themes of the journal. So this year, the artwork that was selected for the cover was Strings of Fate by first-year student Meghana Mohan. And if you haven't seen it already, it's one of the first artworks that you'll encounter as you walk toward the gallery. And please welcome Meghana up to say some words about her artwork.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Meghana, and I'm very grateful to be selected for the cover page this year for Synapses. I'd like to send a heartfelt thank you to the editorial board of the magazine. So my artwork is called Strings of Fate, and it blends beaded embroidery with linoleum block printing on canvas. And so the inspiration for this piece was actually drawn from my interdisciplinary background in the arts and sciences. And particularly this piece was inspired by a neuroscience breakthrough known as rainbow imaging and Michelangelo's famous piece, The Creation of Adam. And so Michelangelo's piece refers to a profound metaphor for the connection between life and the human experience, in which God breathes life into Adam, thus transferring vitality and livelihood into mankind. And in studying these works, I reflected on the symbolic representation of the human connection that physicians often strive to foster with their patients, and the rather godlike complex that we receive in society. In moments of care, we as physicians often breathe vitality into those we meet, restoring not only health, but a sense of purpose, trust, and belonging. And if done properly, this can be profoundly healing for both the patient and the physician. So in the realm of neuroscience and medicine, this idea resonated with me in several compelling ways, particularly in how mental and physical states are interlinked. So to represent that complexity, I turned to linoleum block printing, which is a printmaking technique. So the hands are actually not a drawing, but it's like a print made on a piece of rubber. So I carved out the hands, and then you put the ink on the rubber and then stamp it onto the canvas. And it's like kind of like a negative print or like a negative image of what's carved out. And the finality of the artwork is not revealed until the end, thus reiterating the lengthy journey to physicianhood and the uncertainty that comes with it. Next, to illustrate the rainbow imaging, I utilized beaded embroidery, which is seen in the middle. And so rainbow imaging allows scientists to label hundreds of neurons using only 3 fluorescent proteins. And each color represents a particular connectome or synapse in the neural network. So using 3 fluorescent proteins and this Krylak's recombination mechanism, they can express different fluorescent proteins at random. And when embroidering the scientific imagery, I utilized the beads for the neuron cell bodies, which is seen at the fingertips, and then the threads to image the axons, and then in the middle they meet at the synapse. So as I created this piece, I consistently thought of the role of fate, and just like the stochastic expression patterns in rainbow imaging, our paths cross with others in ways we can't fully explain or anticipate. And in medicine, these connections between physicians, patients, mentors, peers can be profound, and ultimately these interactions are shaped by both choice and chance, and are the strings of fate that bind our lives together. So through this imagery, I hope to illustrate how science, art, spirituality, and humanity all converge. And even throughout my first year of medical school, I have witnessed how fragile the brain is, how little we understand in even the hundreds of lectures we study, and how immense our capacity for connection, resilience, and our impact can be beyond the clinic and classroom. So thank you.
Now I'd like to invite up our second art speaker, Dr. Heather Kind-Keppel she is the university's Associate Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and she also has a faculty appointment within CMS. She's an Assistant Professor of Humanities and Healthcare.
Hello and welcome everyone. I want to thank you all for being here today and for allowing me to speak. I am incredibly humbled to be part of this today. As a social scientist and someone who studied the humanities, it's very humbling to be part of the Chicago Medical School's Synapses journal. So for me, beading is a form of medicine. This may sound odd, but I'm hoping for you to allow for me to explain myself. This piece is a reflection of traditional native beading. In the display case in back, there's an example of what this type of beading looks like in process on a loom. Shout out to my spouse who continues to make my looms for me to bead on over and over again. This piece of art symbolizes where the water meets the sky. As you can see, the blue, and not all water is blue, but those are the colors that spoke to me, meet the different colors of the sky. It is an artistic interpretation of what I see when I'm swimming in an open water. On a perfect day, sun on the horizons at about 6:30 a.m. in perfect conditions. Again, it doesn't always work out that way. Typically when I am beading, I let my patterns emerge. I pick the colors that feel right and begin. My mom has always teased me that I've never been fond of patterns, and this is very true. I don't do well when it comes to sewing like she does. I do not like patterns. With this piece, I wanted to blend my love of beading and swimming. When I am swimming, the sky and water can be one at times. My favorite bodies of water to swim in are the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are rather large. I've swam a couple miles in the oceans as well, but races are usually no less than 2 miles. So it's natural that when I'm swimming, I sometimes cannot see the land depending on the conditions of the water. Beading, like this, is a tedious process. From stringing the loom to threading the needle to lining up the patterns that emerge, it all takes patience and concentration, and yes, my readers, which I've been wearing for about 10 years. I'm talking about seed beads, so they're super little. They're 10, they're 11 and 1s, if you know anything about beading. Yet when I bead, I feel this sense of peace and ease that is hard to adequately put into words. I feel this connection to my ancestors, and there is a calmness that comes over me, knowing that I'm continuing a tradition that goes back generations, right? So beading just isn't a form of art, it's a form of culture, it's a form of way of being, and it's a way I can connect in ways that I can't always adequately put into words. And that's why I say beading is medicine. Please know that I did not come up with this phrase. It's something that we commonly use in Indian country. So medicine comes in all forms. For me, if I'm not beading or swimming, I cannot be my whole self, which brings me to the second half of my story. For a period of time, I could not swim and I could not bead, and that really scared me. In 2019, I woke up with what I thought was a kink in my neck, right? But I ignored it because I thought it would go away, and I left for Boston. And then I was like, oh, it was the traveling, that's why it continues to hurt, it's no big deal. I thought it would go away again. The pain did not subside, but I figured it was because of travel, but then it became chronic, right? And the pain continued. And my primary care provider, and here again is another tie-in, who is an alumnus of the Chicago Medical School, put me on rest, and I used this time to bead. These earrings are an example of one of the pieces I made while I was on rest and recovery. I made them about a year prior to having a diagnosis. During that year, my primary never gave up on me. She continued to help me find someone to work with me. I actually gave a presentation on beading at a national convention, and by this time I had diagnosis, and you'll see in a second what my diagnosis was. But someone in the audience was like, that was your diagnosis. Your subconscious knew your body, and your diagnosis, you just didn't know it at the time. And so as you can see in this picture, that is what was going on. I had lost feelings in my arms. I had lost feelings as my nerve endings were, as you can see, I had a disc and a cage and spacer put in. I had 2 surgeries in 5 months. And that's what was going on. So if you look here and you look there, my mind knew my subconscious knew what was going on in my body, and I didn't know it at the time. So you have to know that if I cannot bead nor swim, I cannot be my whole self. Both ground me and remind me of the strength of my body, mind, and soul when they are allowed the space to heal and embrace self-care. Beading and swimming are medicine to me, and traditional medicine is what allowed me to bead and swim. All are interconnected, and I am thankful to my ancestors and the healthcare providers who believed in me and helped fix me. Now you know, swimming and beading are woven into my DNA. I am thankful I was actually able to share this with you. I was so nervous. Like, I speak all the time, but for some reason this is so very personal. But I was thankful I was given this opportunity through Synapses. I want to express my thanks to the Chicago Medical School, who allowed me to share my story and believe in me. And I want to make it very clear that I am so thankful that I work for a division that embraces my whole self and everything that comes with being who I am. Naiwa, thank you. I forgot. This is me. This is my first swim in 2021. I have my surgeries in 2020. I'm so sorry. I forgot to show this one because I got caught up. But that's me coming out of the water, and so I just wanted to share that. Sorry about that.
Thank you to Dr. Kind-Keppel for sharing a little bit of her process with us. And I just want to reiterate something that the Dean said during opening remarks, that this was the first submission of its kind, and we're always willing to consider any type of art for Synapses. If we can figure out a way to publish it in the journal, we're happy to accept it as a submission. So thank you for submitting the first piece of jewelry to Synapses, and maybe we'll have more in the future. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker. We're going to have a poetry reading. First-year student Pamela Perepelitsky will be reading her poem titled "The Time We Don't Get Paid For."
Hello. Very similarly to Dr. Kind-Keppel, I am too very nervous to be up here, although I don't do much public speaking. But yes, I am a first-year medical student, and I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to the Synapses editorial board. This was a wonderful showcase so far, and I'd also specifically like to thank Candace and Kelly, who I had the privilege to meet earlier this year at the Art Impact Volunteering, who encouraged me to submit my work. So the piece is called "The Time We Don't Get Paid For." There are topics we cannot rule out by the cold logic of elimination. Human souls we hold in the balance of our resolve. What a beautiful thing it is to solve, to treat, to cure, with nothing more than the mind's reach. But truly, the beauty lies elsewhere. It lies in the hand you held, the warmth you offered in a sterile room, in the seat you took, the name you remembered on a crowded day, and the gaze you held steady. You'll move on, caught in the rhythm of repetition, running, reading, never still. But in their stillness, the hand you held will never forget the touch of your fingers. The eyes you gazed into will remember the hues of blue in yours, the quiet strength they saw there. The roots you planted, imaginary at first, will grow, ever-reaching, nourished by the sunshine of your love. There will always be the time you gave, the time you were never taught to give. On days when you forget why, hold on to this, the time you didn't get paid for. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. And we actually have 3 other poems that are part of our exhibit. If you haven't had a chance to see them, we have 3 poems throughout the gallery where the authors recorded themselves reading the poem, and there are QR codes that you can scan. So there are 3 other poems by 2 students and 1 alumnus of Chicago Medical School that we invite you to listen to later. Now, our next speaker, unfortunately, will not be able to make it. We had Sarah Syed, who's a third-year medical student. She was going to read her essay, talk about her essay, Finding My Place in the Clinical Setting, a reflection. But she is still doing a clinical rotation, and she had thought she would be able to make it. But she emailed me about half an hour before the program was scheduled to begin, saying that she was still with patients and wouldn't be able to make it. So. You can read her essay in the journal, so I encourage all of you, if you haven't gotten a copy yet, to get one by the box at the door before you leave, so you can read Sarah's essay as well as the other great works that are in there. So we will move on to our final speaker, who is second-year student Talia Kahn. And for those of you who were able to come to the program last year, Talia was a speaker last year too. She read one of her poems. So we're happy to have her here today to discuss her fiction work titled The Departure.
Hi everyone. Before I start, I'd just like to thank the Synapses Review Board for the opportunity to share my writing once again, and to thank everyone for being here to share the amazing artwork that's being exhibited here. It's truly been an honor to not only have my work accepted to Synapses twice, but to be asked to speak on it, and so I thank you for that. My short fiction piece titled The Departure is a story of a tale as old as time. A disease develops, the sickness spreads across the population, and it wreaks havoc. However, the difference, and I hope I'm not spoiling too much if you haven't read it yet, so I'm sorry. The difference is that my characters are cells in a body, and the disease, unlike something virulent or transmissible like cholera or something, is cancer. So I originally came up with this idea when I was discussing cancer with a non-medical friend of mine. I was trying to do justice to the level of horror and pain that this disease can produce, the insidious mechanisms that can make it so unusually difficult to treat. I remember that, lacking a more apt explanation, I summed up my conversation with, in short, cancer's a bitch. Which is true, and I don't think any cancer patient will disagree with me. Might be blunt, but that's how it is. And so I started to think, what would a cancer cell look like if it could talk and think? And to help me figure this out, I started backwards. And I thought about what a person with the same motivations as a cancer cell might look like. A cancer cell is greedy, selfish, and constantly looking to grow, even at the expense of those around them, and ultimately destroys everything, including itself. In my story, I tried to use phrases that could apply to an evil cell or an evil person. Noxious, pushy, mean. Just like how these traits in a person can ruin relationships, businesses, and lives, cancer can do the exact same thing, and without even the capacity for remorse. Instead of creating a cancerous person, a story we've all heard 1,000 times, I decided to write a personified cancer. After writing a couple of drafts, I sent my piece along to my sister, an English teacher and my lifelong go-to editor. She immediately understood the assignment and made a few notes so that my points would be made clear even to those, such as herself, not very well versed in medical and molecular biology. A few times we argued over science versus syntax, where she would suggest a more eloquent turn of phrase, but I would hold my ground, trying to keep as true to science as possible. For example, I described prophase of mitosis as a cell gathering herself together so that those in the know would understand that mitosis was imminent, but that perhaps less medical folk would still understand a significant change was occurring. My sister just kept saying, "But what's happening?" I was like, you'll see. While I can't say that this piece is 100% scientifically accurate, I think that our compromises allowed for a more coherent and comprehensible story, and one that hopefully carries more emotional resonance. I wanted to find a balance in portraying both the cruel indifference of the biological mechanisms and the total devastation that they can cause to bodies, to families, and to entire communities. Cancer is a topic that I have been interested in professionally and personally for over a decade now, and using my writing to explore the topic has allowed me a deeper understanding of the pain and the harm that can be caused by the disease, especially while dealing with the diagnosis and recent death of my own great-aunt. It gave me something to blame instead of trying to find faults in genetics, pollution, or any other potential carcinogen to which fearful fingers have been trying to cling. This piece gave me something to turn to when I was upset, and I know that I have the tools available to me in the future to help process my emotions and to help further increase my empathy for my future patients. Creating empathy for biological cells, however, cancers or not, is not the easiest task. However, I feel like this was also for the best in terms of my medical education. Using art to forge empathy will allow me to stay mentally strong while still emotionally involved. And no matter what difficulties I encounter throughout my career, I hope it would also allow me to provide better comfort and emotional support to my patients. Writing this piece has also been an exercise in explaining the physiology that I know so well, but in a new way that can be appreciated by medical professionals or laymen alike. Every day, a physician has to discuss complex medical topics in a way that makes sense to their patients. And while not every disease can or should be personified, Being able to create metaphors or stories of a disease might be an easier way for patients to follow along, allowing them to really comprehend the changes in their body. This could alleviate fear and anxiety in the patient and get them to feel more like a part of the care team because they feel like they're not missing out on crucial information. In doing so, patients will feel more like active characters in their own story. Using art as a means to discuss and share medicine is just one way that we can better connect with our patients and the world at large to improve healthcare. In the future, I may not have a lot of free time, but I will always find time to write. I hope to continue to study cancer and maybe even continue writing about it too. There are too many stories to tell, and there will always be more tomorrow. Thank you for listening to mine.
Thank you, Talia, and thank you to the rest of our speakers who came here today to share their art and their poetry with us. And I also wanted, before we conclude, I wanted to thank everyone who contributes to the journal and this event. It takes a lot of work to put the journal together, and it is done completely in-house at the university. So I just want to thank our editorial staff, the students and faculty and alumni who serve on our editorial board, the students who serve on our review board, and then the administration who serves on our third board, the Journal Oversight Board. And finally, thank you to Dr. Rasgado-Flores for providing the live music today, as he has several times in the past for our event. And then finally, thank you to marketing, production, printing, food for thought, and facilities management for putting together much of the event and the art exhibit. So thank you, and finally, thank you to all of you for coming, and I encourage you to spend some more time looking at the art if you haven't seen it already, and make sure to grab a copy of the journal before you go. Thank you.